Hey there, everybody. Just thought you guys should be aware that if there is a particular deck profile or duel that you want to get to without having to scroll through the video, I put timestamps in the description down below for you. With that said, let's get to the video. What is up, YouTube? This is Jeffro77, and welcome to part 2 of my April updated deck profile videos. This is going to be the last one, I promise. At least until a new Battlin comes around. Let's begin this video off with my Mandate Warrior deck. Here's what my Mandate Warrior deck looked like in 2020. And here's what it looks like today. Now, as you can see, Blackwing is gone, as it's banned now. Thanks, Emancipator. And in its place, I had a second copy of Valkyrian, the Mandate Warrior. I also cut out the 2 Elemental Hero Prismas for a third copy of Delta, the Mandate Warrior. And I replaced the 2 Doki Doki cards for 2 copies of Ash Blossom and Joy Spring and 2 copies of Ghost Bell and Haunted House. And since I don't run any hero monsters anymore, Hero Lives is gone. I cut down polymerization to 2 copies. I added 1 copy of Ties of the Brethren and 2 copies of An Emancipator Sons. Call the Hunt is now down to 1 copy, and I added 2 copies of Pot of Prosperity. I cut.
Few moments later.
Okay, sorry for the little delay. Apparently, I didn't say the fact that I cut Catapult, so when I was editing this deck the first time around. So anyway, Catapult Zone is gone. And I added a second copy of Magnetics Field. And I bumped Infinite Impermanence to 3 copies now. Now, as for the changes to my extra deck, Elemental Hero Gaia is gone, along with Eoswarm Exciton Knight, Daigusto Emerald, and Mrs. Radiant. In their place, I have 1 Divine Arsenal AA Zeus, Sky Thunder. Let's see here. Saryuja Skull-Dread, Nightmare Cerberus, and 1 Predaplant Verte Anaconda. So yeah, that's it for my Mandate Warrior. Let's move on to Red Eyes. Okay, here's what my Red Eyes deck looked like in 2020. And here's what it looks like today. I cut the Arcana Dark Magician, the Red Eyes Alternative Black Dragon, the Red Eyes Black Flare Dragon. I don't know why I mumbled there. And my Gearfried, the Red Eyes Iron Knight, down to 1 copy. The Summon Skull, as well as the Immortal Phoenix Gearfried, are gone for the deck. I added 1 copy of Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon, 1 Tempest, the Dragon Ruler of Storms, and 2 copies of Noctovision Dragon. I think that's how you said. I could be wrong. I also removed the 2 copies of Rocket Synchrons and replaced them with Starly's Stifer. I think that's how you said. Now I cut out the Magical Ice Fusion as well as the cards of the Redstone from my spell lineup and added the following cards. 1 copy of 1 for 1, 1 Dragon Shrine, Chaos Space, Call by the Grave, World Legacy Guard Dragon, and Dragon Ravine. I cut the Return of the Red down to one copy, and oh, not again.
Few moments later.
Sorry about the plane and my mess up with the deck again. Anyway, I switched the Solemn Judgment with the Solemn Strike. Now, as for the changes to my extra deck, I cut the Archerine Black Skull Dragon, the Borload Savage Dragon, as well as Cross Sheep from the extra deck. I cut the Red Eyes Dark Dragoon down to 1 copy, and bumped the Red Eyes Flare Metal Dragon up to 2. And I also added Dragon Unite Romulus. I think that's how you say it. I also added Striker Dragon, Guard Dragon LP to my Lake lineup. And yeah, that's basically it for all the changes. And let's move on to the 5Ds era with Blackwings. Okay, here's what my Blackwing deck looked like a couple of months ago, and here's what it looks like today. I bumped the Blackwing Simoon the Poison Wind, Blackwing Gale the Whirlwind, and Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring up to 3 copies. And I cut Blackwing Guts the Back Blast down to 1 copy. Blackwing Gladius and the Midnight Sun is gone. I also took out Foolish Burial and Solemn Judgment as well, and added 2 copies of Forbidden Droplet. As for changes to my extra deck, I cut the Wee Witch's Apprentice of the deck, and I added number 41 Babushka the Tabby Tired Tepper. And I replaced Borload Sword Dragon, my apologies, for Access Code Talker. And that's basically it for the Blackwing update. Let's move on to Fortune Ladies. Okay, here's what my Fortune Lady deck used to look like. And here's what it looks like today. I cut Fortune Lady, Fortune Fairy, Hikari down to 2 copies, and added 2 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. I cut out the Secret Village of the Spellcaster's Field Spell, as long as with the 2 copies of Wonder Wand. Then I added 1 Instant Fusion and 1 Magical Ice Fusion into the deck. And that's basically it for the main deck changes. For the extra deck changes, I added Quintet Magician and Thousand Eyes Restrict. Another change I made is I cut Trishula. Yeah, I know, I had to do it. And I also replaced Clearwing Synchro Dragon with Arcanite Magician. And I changed my Stardust Charge Warrior for a Coral Dragon. And I cut Borrowed Sword Dragon and Nightmare Unicorn from my Link lineup and added 1 copy of Barricade Borg Blocker. And that's it for Fortune Ladies, and let's move on to Reptilianne. Okay, here's what my Reptilianne deck used to look like a few months ago, and here's what it looks like today. I bumped my Reptilianne Fesky and my Reptilianne Celia up to 3 copies. I cut out the 2 Misted Tomato and the 3 Kaga Tokage that I originally had. And I cut Reptilian Viper down to 2 copies. And Reptilian now got down to 1 copy. And then I added 1 Reptilian Medusa, 1 Zoha, Haze of the Abyss, 1 Nihil, Dirge of the Abyss, and 1 Null, Dirge of the Abyss. I think that's how you say all those names. And then I added 3 copies of Yamoi Mori? I think that's how you say it. I could be dead wrong. Now, as for the changes to my spell lineup, the 2 Allure Darkness, 1-for-1 Fibrous Rebirth, and Reptilian Poison are gone. In their place, I added 3 Snake Rain, 2 Snake Lily of the Abyss, 1 Pot of Desires, and 3 copies of World Legacy Succession. The 2 copies of Infinite Permanence, Ghosted Match and Solemn Judgment, are gone. And I bumped Crackdown here to 2 copies. Then we come to the changes to my extra deck lineup. For all the cards that are gone now, Outer Entity Hastor, number 41, Babushka the Totally Tired Temper, the Phantom Knights of Cursed Javelin, Lord Sword Dragon, Nightmare Phoenix, and Link Karibo are all gone. Now, King of the Feral Imps, Alien Shock Trooper M-Frame, and Crystron Hellkey Vibrex have been bumped up to 2 copies. And Reptilian Echidna has been bumped up to 3 copies. And I added Saryuja's Skulldread and Underworld Goddess of the Closed World. So that's it for the changes to my Reptilian deck. Let's move on to the Resonator. Okay, here's what my Resonator, aka Jack Atlas deck, looked like a couple of months ago. And here's what it looks like today. I cut down the Red Familiar down to 2 copies, and bumped Witch of the Black Forest and Ash Blossom Enjoy Spring up to 3 copies. And I added 2 copies of Ghost Bell and Haunted House and Hot Beer Squadron to my monster lineup. As for the spells, I took out Harpy's Feather Duster, Dark Ruler No More, and One-Time Passcode. I bumped Pop Desires up to 2 copies, and bumped Resonator Command up to 3 copies. And I added 2 copies of Forbidden Droplet. As for traps, I took out the Solemn Judgment, King's Constance, and Synchro Call, and replaced them with Solemn Strike. I made no changes to my extra deck lineup. However, I did include some cards in my side deck that you could put in to this deck if you want to, say, bring out Majestic Red Dragon. Most of these is made up of the new support coming out of Dawn of the Majesty. And these cards are 2 Stardust Synchron, 2 Stardust Trail, 1 Omni Dragon Rotor, 2 Wish Converging Dragon, Majestic Red Dragon, Stardust Dragon, and 1 Arriving Miracle. Again, these are all here just in case if you want to take this deck and turn it to a deck that can focus on bringing this card out, if you wish. And speaking of Majestic Dragons, let's move on to the Synchron deck. Okay, here's what my Synchron deck used to look like a couple of months ago. And here's what it looks like today. Jump Forward and Boost Warrior are gone for the deck. And I cut Double Warrior down to 2 copies. Synchron Carrier and Satellite Synchron have been cut down to 1 copy. And I added the following cards to my monster lineup. 2 copies of Stardust Synchron, 1 Stardust Trio, 1 Rush Warrior, 1 Stardust Zhang Long, 1 Omni Dragon Botor, and 1 Wish Converging Dragon. As for my spell lineup, I cut the Perform Popper Up and Manda Reverse from the spells. Living Fossil has been bumped up to 2 copies, and I added the following spells. 1 Pot of Avarice, 1 Stardust Illuminate, 1 Arriving Miracle, and DDR, Different Dimension Reincarnation, and 1 Black Garden. And I also have here Majestic Mirage for my trap lineup. Now, as for the changes to my extra deck, I cut Cosmic Blazer Dragon, Ravenous Croco Dragon, Archtheus, Cyphering Lord Omega, Jump Berserker, and Crystalline Helki Fibrex. Junk Speeder has been cut down to 1 copy, and I added the following monsters to my extra deck. Those are Shooting Majestic Star Dragon, Majestic Star Dragon, Stardust Dragon, Stardust Spark Dragon, Power Tool Dragon, and Garden Rose Maiden. And with that concludes the updates to the same 5D Zera decks. Let's move on to Zexal. Okay, here's what my Battlin Boxer deck used to look like not too long ago. And here's what it looks like today. Battlin Boxer Shadow, Goblin D. Berg, and Battlin Boxer Counterpunch have been cut down to 2 copies, while Battlin Boxer Spar has been bumped up to 2 copies. Ass Blossom Enjoys Spring has been bumped up to 3 copies, and my 3 Kage to Kage are gone. I've added 2 copies of Battlin Boxer Veil, and 2 copies of Ghost Bell and Haunted Mansion, and 2 copies of Fire Flint Lady to my monster lineup. As for the spells, I took out the 2 Rank Up Magic Limited Barion's Force. In their place are Zexal Import and Double or Nothing. And I took out the 2 copies of Jolt Counter for 2 copies of Torrential Tribute. And that's it for the changes from my main deck. As for my extra deck, I took out number 80 Rhapsody in Berserk, and its Chaos form, Requiem in Berserk, And I also took out Nightmare Unicorn, Nightmare Phoenix, and Infinitrack Fortress Megaclops. In their places, I've included Isolde, Two Tales of the Noble Knights, number 39 Utopia Double, Tornado Dragon, number 39 Utopia, and Divine Arsenal AA Zeus Sky Thunder. And yeah, that's basically it for Battlin Boxers. Let's move on to Gimmick Puppets. Alright then, here's what my Gimmick Puppet used to look like a couple months ago, and here's what it looks like today. Gimmick Puppet Egghead, Gimmick Puppet Gear Changer, and the two Gimmick Puppet Destroy are gone from the deck. Gimmick Puppet Magnedoll and Gimmick Puppet Banquetdoll? I think that's how you pronounce this card's name. Again, sorry about the blank. They've been bumped up to 3 copies. And I've added 2 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. As for the changes to my spell lineup, I cut out the 2 Pot of Desires and the Foolish Burial. My Condolence puppet has been cut down to 1 copy, and I replaced the 2 copies of Rank Up Magic Numeron Force with 2 copies of the newly freed Rank Up Magic Argent Chaos Force. And I've also added XYZ Import and
Few moments later.
sorry about that. And 1 copy of Perform Puppet. As for my traps, I took out the Solemn Judgment, bumped Infinite Permanence up to 3 copies, and added 2 copies of Trap Trick. As for my extra deck lineup, I took out number 38, Hope Harbinger Dragon Titanic Galaxy, and Nightmare Unicorn. In their place, I bumped number 15, Gimmick Puppet Giant Grinder, and its Chaos form, Chaos form, number C15, Gimmick Puppet Giant Hunter to 2 copies. And yeah, that's basically it. Let's move on to ninjas. Okay, I'm not going to even bother showing how the original deck looked, as I did not make that many changes. Okay, I only made 1 change, and that's because the Monster Union Carrier got banned. So in its place, I put in IP Masquerina. So with all that said, let's move on to Photons. Okay, here's what my Photon deck used to look like, and here's what it looks like now. Photon Advancer and Photon Thresher are now gone. Galaxy Knight, as well as Galaxy Wizard, have been bumped up to 3 copies. And I added 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. Now, as for the changes to the spell lineup, I took out Rank Up Magic, Cypher Ascension, the 2 Trade-In, and Galaxy Trance. In their place are 2 copies of Return of the Dragon Lords, 2 Galaxy Zero, and Call by the Grave. And I condensed my whole trap lineup to 1 copy of Solemn Strike. Now, as for the changes to my extra deck, I took out Neo Galaxy Cyber Dragon, as well as Bujinki Ashimiya. And in their place, I bumped number 90 Galaxy Eyes Photon Lord and Galaxy Eyes Cypher Blade Dragon up to 2. And that's basically it for my Photon deck, and thus ends the sexual era. Now we move on to the Arc V era. Okay, here's what my Melodious deck used to look like. And here's what it looks like today. I took out Chapania, the Melodious Maestra, and soloed the Melodious Songstress from my main deck. I bumped Elgi, the Melodious Diva, up to 2 copies, and I add 2 copies of Honest. Now, as for a change to the spell lineup, I took out Raigeki, and that's about it. Oh, and I bumped Infinite Impermanence up to 3 copies. As for changes to my extra deck, I switched Evil Storm Exciton Knight for Tornado Dragon. And I switched Borrowed Sword Dragon for Access Code Talker. And thus ends my Melodious deck changes. Let's move on to Predaplants. Okay, here's what my Predaplant deck used to look like. And here's what it looks like now. I cut Predaplant Banksy Org down to 1 copy and added 1 copy of Predaplant Duroso Femilim Hydra. I think that's how you say it. And I took out the 2 As Blossom Enjoys Springs for 2 copies of Predaplant Flight Trap. And that's it for the monster changes. As for spells, I took out Instant Fusion, Raigeki, Harpy's Feather Duster, Predaprime Fusion, and the 2 Predablasts. I bumped Polymerization and Predapruning up to 3 copies now. Super Polymerization got cut down to 2. I added Foolish Burial Goods, Ultra Polymerization, and Predaponics to the main deck. And I took out the 2 Infinite Impermanents for Predaplanning and Predaplanet. I know some of these changes sound very weird, but these were suggested to me by someone on the YJPro deck site. Let's move on to my extra deck, where I bumped my Grieve and Infuse Dragon up to 2, and cut Predaplant Tritafin Oritum. Anyway, I cut this guy down to 1 copy. I took out Earth Golem Magnister as well as Thousand-Eyes Restrict, bumped Star Inventive Fusion Dragon up to 3 copies, and I took out Wee Witch's Apprentice and cut Predaplant Verte Anaconda up to 1 copy. And I added 1 Cross Sheep as well as Clearwing Synchro Dragon. And that's it for the Predaplant deck. Let's move on to Superheavy Samurai. Okay, much like with my Ninja deck, I'm not even going to bother showing the before and after, because I only made 1 change, and that was because Union Carrier got banned. So in his place, I bumped Superheavy Samurai Scarecrow up to 3. So with that said, let's move on to the final deck, which is the Phantom Knights. Okay, here's what my Phantom Knights deck looked like before. And here's what it looks like now. So for the changes I made, I bumped Seer and Graph up to 3 copies. And I took out Libric, Melbranch of the Burning Abyss, Psychic Wielder, and the 2 Kakamucha Knights. And I took out the Phantom Knights of Rusty Bark. No, not the... I didn't take out that card. I meant I took out Nightmare Unicorn and replaced it with a second copy of the Phantom Knights of Rusty Bark Deej. Ugh, I can talk good. So yeah, that's it for all the changes I made to my decks. Hopefully the next video that I'm doing won't be a deck update. It'll be more of a dual replay deck of either the Rose Dragon deck or a deck based on Chess Princeton. I haven't decided which two yet. Now some of you might be wondering where other decks like Speedroys or Lerlus are. I am waiting until the new support from the new Duelist of Whirlwind set gets announced before I decide to change up those decks. Now, if you want to try these deck styles for yourself to play with and tweak, there is a link to those decks in the description down below. It'll take you to the YGO Pro deck website. And yeah, I guess that's it for now. This is Jack4077, signing out.